Do you have a bullshit job? One that don't bring anything to the table? Or are you one of the lucky few whose job has actual meaning? In 1930, John Maynard Keynes predicted that by the end of the century technology would be so advanced that countries like Britain or the United States could achieve a 15-hour week. There are many reasons to believe he was right. Technologically, we are very capable of doing this, and yet it did not happen. Instead, technology has organized itself, if at all, to find ways to get us all to work harder. For this, jobs had to be created, which, especially in Europe and North America, have tons of people who spend their entire professional life doing tasks that they secretly think shouldn't actually be done. The moral and spiritual harm that arises from this situation is profound. It's a scar on our collective soul. However, practically nobody talks about it. A recent report comparing employment in the US between 1910 and 2000 gives us a clear picture. In the course of the last century, the number of employees in domestic, industrial, and agricultural employment has plummeted. In the course of time, the number of specialist, managerial, administrative, sales and service personnel tripled and grew from a quarter to 3/4 of total employment. In other words, productive jobs have been largely automated as predicted. Even if you count industrial workers worldwide, including the working masses in India and China, these workers still do not make up as much of the world's population as they used to be. But instead of allowing massive cuts in working hours to free the world population from pursuing their own projects, joys, visions and ideas, industries like financial services or telemarketing, or the unprecedented expansion of sectors like corporate law, health and science administration, human resources, and public relations. And these numbers don't even reflect all the people whose job it is to provide administrative, technical, or safety support for these industries, or for the whole range of ancillary industries like dog washers or pizza delivery people working all night. They only exist because everyone else is spending so much of their time working in all the other ones. It's like someone inventing useless jobs just to keep us all working. And this is exactly where the secret lies. That is exactly what cannot happen in capitalism. Sure, in old inefficient socialist states like the Soviet Union, where employment was seen as both a right and a sacred duty, the system invented as many jobs as needed. That's why Soviet department stores took 3 employees to sell a piece of meat. But of course, that is the kind of problem market competition is supposed to solve. Once a company has achieved a certain level of stability, the top priority is to ensure its own survival. It doesn't matter how much work your employees do. It is important that someone is always to blame, and that the contracts can be kept. That brings in money. If you have a $1 million a year contract, it's not a huge cost when about 50,000 employees a year do next to nothing to manage that account. There is no mastermind that created this swollen system. It developed organically over the decades. By some strange alchemy that no one can fully explain, the number of employees seems to be finally growing. Not much different from the Soviet workers, actually 40 or even 50 hours a week in on paper, but effectively 15 hours work as Keynes predicted, as the rest of their time is spent organizing or attending motivational seminars, updating their Facebook profiles, or downloading TV set-top boxes. As organizations became more complex, their basic purpose shifted from making money or providing a government service to maintaining the organization itself. This is best done with a steadily growing number of employees, because there are always chances for promotions, and therefore it is best for any employee to protect and expand the organization. Added to this are other benefits, such as the ability to have increasingly specialized staff, greater political influence, and greater power over prices and wages. Although the amount of work increases over time, large companies expand much faster, so many of the new jobs are temporary. Imagine companies trying to operate in anarchy. Without a government, the companies that thrive are those that become paramilitary organizations and compete through armed force, not the ones that provide the best goods and services. In our society, this problem is prevented by the government, but there are other forms of coercion that the government cannot or should not monopolize. An example of this is creating consumer bias through marketing. Despite personalized recommendations, most marketing is of no use to consumers. It is much better for people to research products and services through unbiased reviews and directories. Like the military, marketing only exists to create a competitive advantage or to counter the advantage of others, completely independent of supply and demand. And when marketing arms races take place, the result can be the creation of multitudes of jobs that do nothing but counter the efforts of others. The answer is clearly not economic. It is moral and political. The ruling class has found that having a happy and productive population with free time poses a deadly threat, a feeling that work is a moral value in itself, and that one who, for most of the waking hours, is unwilling to submit to any kind of intense work discipline, deserves nothing, is extraordinarily comfortable for them. There are many questions to ask here, starting with, what does it say about our society that seems to generate an extremely limited need for talented poets and musicians, but a seemingly endless need for corporate law specialists? When 1% of the population controls most of the available wealth, what we call the market reflects what they think is useful or important, nobody else. But even more, it shows that the majority of the people in these jobs are finally aware of this. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever met a corporate attorney who didn't think his job was rubbish. The same is true for almost all of the new industries described above. There is a whole class of employed professionals out there who, when you meet them at parties and admit that you are doing something that might be considered interesting, they want to avoid talking entirely about their profession. Give them a few drinks and they'll rant about how useless and stupid their job really is. As an example, in our society the rule of thumb seems to apply that the more obviously one's own work is useful to other people, the lower the probability that they will be paid for it. Again, an objective measure is hard to find, but an easy way to understand it is to ask yourself, what if all these people just disappeared? Say what you want about nurses, garbage collectors, or mechanics. It is obvious that if they disappeared in a cloud of smoke, the results would be instantaneous and catastrophic. How can you even start talking about dignity in the workplace when you secretly feel like your job shouldn't exist? How can one not create a feeling of deep anger and resentment? Yet it is the peculiar genius of our society that its rulers have found a way to ensure that anger is directed precisely at those who can actually do meaningful work. Thanks for watching. Till next time.